I'm Amy Hazel, and today I'm going to be watching and commenting on Bruce Berry, my friend, tying some flies. Bruce,
On
I'll tell
YouTube
you a
Live.
little bit about. I'll tell you just a little bit about myself. I own Deschutes Angler Fly Shop with my husband John, and we're in Maupin, Oregon, on the Deschutes River, here in beautiful North Central Oregon. Bruce, take it away, buddy.
Hi, Amy. Thanks for the introduction. So it's been a while since I've seen you with Corona. This is kind of the YouTube Live and Beulah thing's kind of fun because we can all get together and still share stories and tie flies and stuff. But I was just trying to think today while I was driving up here. I had to commandeer my sister's extra room so I could do the video. Whether I'd rather do this or be sitting on a boat with you drinking whiskey on a full moon night in Christmas Island.
Well,
that was pretty fun.
We are good at that.
Man, that trip was awesome.
What are you going to tie today, Bruce?
What's that?
What are you going to tie first?
I'm going to tie a marabou tube fly, some marabou and some rabbit. So for those who haven't been to Christmas Island, if you do it for 2 weeks. It's better. 2 weeks is better than one. So the fly I picked, Amy, is I have 4 or 5 of them finished, but I just want to kind of keep everybody in suspense.
Yeah.
But I chose this fly, A, because everybody's got marabou and rabbit. 2, it's a fly that's tied with pretty common materials, which I think most people have. And then 3, I don't think a lot of people think about the little fine proportions to make the fly not foul or easy to cast or swim well and all those good little things. So we'll go over a few of those today while we're putting this fly together. I've got a couple different colorways tied up. You can adjust this and fish it for trout. You can drastically change the colors for what I'm doing today to suit your own needs. And with that, we'll get going. Everybody ready?
All righty, Bruce.
Okay, so the components we're using today start with a Pro Flexi needle. This is the 110 millimeter length. That's what we call large, and that's in my vise right now. Keep in mind, whatever vise you have, this needle will fit. It's made long so that it can be cut from the backside to fit a specific vise. Rinsetti's, most of Rinsetti's fit them, and what's the other popular one? HMH has a little collet system. You may need to actually cut it to fit a Rinsetti, but you can cut it for either vise fit, or once you know the tube you use and the length that you generally use, you can cut it just specifically for that size. That way you don't have any needle in front of the tube or no excess in back. But they're made to be custom cut, so don't feel like you shouldn't get after that thing with a Dremel tool or a set of dikes or whatever.
You know, Bruce, what I love about that needle is that your tube fits on that needle and it's round in the front and then flat in the back, so that no matter how much pressure you apply when you're tying, the tube itself does not spin. That's amazing.
Isn't that awesome? I mean, it's such a simple design. The only thing I had an issue with it when I was originally learning how to use it a decade ago was I was so worried about it spinning that I would force it on really hard. And then once you put thread wraps and pressure, I had a hard time getting the first 5 or 6 off. So yeah, you don't have to He-Man the thing on. Just put it on. It'll snug up. And as soon as it feels like it needs force, quit. But yeah, it's simple to use. And so yeah, the needle's in the vise. It's ready to go. I'm using what's the name of my vise, Amy? This is the Rotary Regal.
It's not the Medallion series. I just got one. I should know. Revolution, yeah.
I love it.
I just want to say that Ben Carmichael has piped in a little bit here. He says, drinking whiskey sounds good, but tonight should be fun too. And he's raising a glass to us right now. Also, our friend Jenny O'Brien piped in, and she's very excited about the tying session.
Hello, J.O.B. and Mr. Carmichael. So tube is going to be a Pro Nano tube in black today. The hook guide that holds the hook in the back is going to be a Pro Medium. For Steelhead, medium or large works. I like the mediums because they fit the hooks very tight in the 1s, 2s, and 4s. So if you tie a clinch knot, you can pull it just into the very back of the hook guide and it'll stay put. Medium or large works, and we come in 9 colors, so you can add or take away hot spots. The next piece will be a flexi weight, 10 millimeter, and I'm going with black today. The final piece of the pie for this fly is going to be an ultrasonic disc Gunsmoke small. That's 7 millimeters. And you could go 7 millimeters or 9, depending on your preference. So those are the pro components we're using, and we'll start tying a fly. I've
One
only
thing
got
I
an
love
hour.
about those hook guides is changing the color up. So you can have a green budded marabou one day and an orange budded one the next.
I don't know what to say to that other than I concur. So this can be a little fumbly putting the hook guide on the tube. I've always liked to do it where I put the hook guide on the needle and then bring the tube to it. It's just how much easier to make the connection and then seat it. So we're ready to rip. This first couple of steps is black on black on black. I brought orange thread in case you guys need a contrast, but I'll start with black and I think we'll get through this fly. So I'm giving myself some space for a hot spot in the back and then another 5 or so millimeters in front of that. You guys will see how it comes together and why I'm doing it in a couple of minutes. Please stay tuned.
Happy Cinco de Mayo, everyone.
Right on, Amy Hazel. You have a Cinco de Mayo dinner that you're missing for this, don't you?
No, it got moved to the 8th. So that was good.
Ocho de Mayo. I see how it works.
Ocho de Mayo.
Medium fluorescent pink chenille is going to be our hot spot.
Nice.
You could make a big fat dubbing ball if you want.
Hey, Bruce, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how you don't want to get too stuck on materials, that just because you see a tire use one thing doesn't mean you have to use that thing.
Exactly.
It's nothing drives me more crazy than a guy comes into the fly shop and he wants this one exact thing that was probably discontinued 25 years ago, but there are 7 other things that are identical, but he won't take any of them.
The exact same thing with a different package and they won't have it. That's right.
Yeah.
The chenille, you probably go with large. I don't know. The medium seems to work really well on this to build this bump. You could dub it. You could pick it out. I think the reason why I'm putting this dubbing bump in the back is I want the hot spot, which I could have chosen a hot hook guide, but I think this bump is also going to create some lift on the back so the fly rides level. It's also going to slide everything forward so that all the materials don't crowd the hook. They just kind of bump against the hook, so they're not going to foul. So with this bump, when we tie that chenille in, I'm going forward 1. Let me see if I can count. I already counted wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, just touching wraps, not super tight, but I'm going back over. 1, 2, nice snug. I'm going to put 1 right in the middle so it starts looking, oh man, it's like a reverse egg sucking leech, Amy.
Wow, loving it.
Nice ball of chenille, should stay put, fairly durable. And then there is that little space in there. That's going to go before the weight. I could have used very easily, instead of a small 10 millimeter weight, I could have used a medium 15 millimeter weight, but I also don't want this fly too heavy, right? Okay. I found talking to guys like Eric Ishawada and lots of guys that are trout people with spay rods in trout states, all the trout people tend to like their flies much heavier than steelhead fishermen like their flies, right? So.
And why do you think that is, Bruce?
I think they want them to sink fast and strip them out. And they put a little bit more movement on the flies where we don't. They just generally tend to fish lighter sink tips, shorter sink tips, and heavier flies. They want them to plummet.
Where we fish longer sink tips and lighter flies.
Right, the exact opposite, because we're the Northwest and we got to do it our way.
Yeah.
So if you got rid of this thread bump in the back and you want to do the same size weight and you wanted it more trout heavy, you could take a tungsten weight or this drop weight, and that would give you the same spacing, and it would add weight to the fly and forward weight to the fly, which is good. But for the steelhead fly, I really think if you just get them heavy enough to break the surface tension and let your casting angle and sink tip you're using do the work, you're in the game. And there's nothing worse than a fly that's hard to cast. Wouldn't you agree, Amy Hazel?
100%, Bruce.
Yeah. I learned the hard way, and years ago threw away a box of flies that were just almost impossible to cast. Fish and eat them, but
we usually throw them to see if they're going to be easy to cast. If you can chuck them across the room real easily, they should cast pretty easily.
Too wind resistant. Sometimes you huck them and they fall like right at your feet. Other times you can throw them across the whole room.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So being that this spot is going to be hopefully eaten by a steelhead and they're going to fight hard, I want to give it kind of a tourniquet with some thread wraps and make that void space strong. We'll just throw a quick 3-turn hand whip finish over it and then plug a product. That's what we're here to do, right, James? Amy, everybody?
Yeah, that's what we're here to do, Bruce. Actually, we're here to have fun on Cinco de Mayo.
That's right. So what I'm going to do is just add a little bit of this Pro UV resin over the top of it. I was not a huge fan of UV glues till this came out.
Best resin ever.
It's like household fix-all. This stuff's great. So I'm going to put a little bit on top of the thread wraps. Ooh, I'm bumping my table. So I just want to bring that tube forward so I can slide it. And we're going to add a little bit of resin.
You're bringing the tube forward so you can spin it around while you apply resin?
Yeah, just so I can spin it. And I don't have the rotary set up for the axis deal. So this is just going to turn it into my axis. And yeah, that looks pretty good. We'll take a UV light, and with the Pro resin, you know, like I don't have that new Loon UV light. That's a terrific light. This is the old Clear Cure goo light, and it's also good, but they don't make them anymore. You'll find 5 or 6 seconds with this resin cures it. There's no need to hold it for 10, 15, 20, 30 seconds. It doesn't do anything for you but waste time. So then I butt that weight up there, and we're onto the front end of the fly. Easy box filler, fairly common materials.
Now you're tying the thread right in front of the black weight, which we can't really see the black weight very easily, but.
Right, exactly. I don't know if this would help.
Maybe you should have used the silver weight.
Something like that. I thought about the colors too. Maybe copper would have been good, but we'll start the thread. And then we're going to put a dubbing loop together, and I'm going to use marabou in the front end along with rabbit. But before I do that, I want to prop it a little bit. So handy dandy dubbing tool. This is the Hairline Spinner. It's got different hooks. This is a shepherd hook. What are some of the other dubbing spinners out there, Amy? There's OPST.
Stonefo makes a dubbing spinner that's like the Stonefo Roto Dubber, which is a great one.
Are those the much smaller ones?
OPST has one, but they're kind of hard to find.
Gotcha. But you know, whether you prefer this type of dubbing spinner or the other, once you know how to use them, they all achieve the same effect. I hear a lot of people saying, I'm going to move my camera for a second, not to make a long dubbing loop and let it sit down. Can you see the way that's sitting at like a 45-degree angle against the base of my Regal?
Yeah.
I think that it serves a purpose for me just while I'm prepping my material to go in the dubbing loop, that it's not free hanging and spinning around. Right, so it just kind of stays stationary. That's why I like doing it that way. And I'm going to you could put Arctic fox in here, a rabbit. You could put a ton of different kind of furs. I'm going to use possum. But one thing I've seen with possum is a lot of people go for the biggest, longest stuff. And this can get obtusely long. That's a huge possum. We want something more the size of rabbit possum. We're going to take it off the leather. And you don't need a ton of it. The fiber density is a lot. There's a lot more density to the possum than there is rabbit. So we got some purple rabbit. We're going to pull it off the hide. And this is really more than I need. So I'm going to clip that down a little bit.
Is that your Pro possum?
This one is. Aren't
and
possums
then what other materials would you substitute in there for that? Like, could you do fin raccoon?
The fin raccoon, yeah, because it's going to be short, would be fine. I wouldn't do a long fin raccoon dubbing loop. It tends to tangle and knot. But if it's, you know, this is only going to be about the length of the hot spot in the back, so that would work fine. Arctic fox, marble fox.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of what other furs. I'm a little brain dead right now. But yeah, you could anything with a nice medium density. You know, you wouldn't want to put bucktail in it or something like that. But yeah, this possum fur is almost perfect. But Arctic fox, marble fox, those would be 2 excellent substitutions as well. And then
cool. So Edward Howell says, "Hey Bruce, looking good."
Eddie Howells, I have not seen you since about 2011 on the Deschutes River. That was a great trip. So to get this going, once I got my leather, I just bend the leather in half vertically. Then I straighten the fibers, transfer into my left hand, and cut the fiber off the hide.
You're not using a fancy clip?
No fancy clip.
Come on, Bruce.
Right. And I don't know if everybody watched Johnny King. Oh, the one thing I didn't show, the width of this tube leaves that top of that dubbing loop really wide open. It won't do it so badly on a hook. So to close that dubbing loop so it holds the materials tight, I'm going to put 2 wraps around it. This might even be 3, and 2 over the top. Now my dubbing loop is closed at the top.
It was amazing how you did that with just one finger, Bruce.
One finger. If you, you learn
Ben
dexterity,
Carmichael
you're going to be a fly
says, I
cutter,
can
right?
see the weight on the laptop, no problem. So he can see you. I guess people that are watching on something more than a phone can see that.
Nice.
And then Ben says, where I fish for Atlantic salmon, we can't use weighted tubes like this. Do you ever tie with the soft sport disc heads?
Yeah, well, you want to dub over the weight so no one can tell.
You are a bad man, Bruce.
Yes.
Ben Carmichael follows the rules.
Right. No, I do like, and a lot of times I don't really finish the fly with I think he's talking about our soft sonic disc, Amy, the little bell-shaped one with the holes. I don't finish a lot of flies with that one, but I would put that soft sonic disc right here and then build the fly in front of it to give it a little bit of shoulder. Yeah. And those work great until you get to large and extra large. They're actually so big that the force of the water will create lift. They'll actually make the fly right up in the current. But yeah, the soft sonic's a great way to start the front end of a fly.
What's wrong with the skater, Bruce?
That's a good question. There's nothing. Well, yeah, a wintertime 4-inch long skater with an extra large soft sonic tip.
I've hooked fish on skaters that big.
Right. So I'm going to spread this possum out. And when you're doing a dubbing loop, I mean, for those that are versed in it, they know. But for those that are newer to tying, try to keep the hair 90 degrees perpendicular, right? Thread going this way, hair going that way. You don't want to mix a hair. And then a lot of times people will cut these butt ends really short. I'm actually going to leave those long. That's a good 1/4 inch, maybe slightly less, but that's going to help prop the tips and keep it up, the material in front of it. I'm actually using the butt section there, the butts. And once I get it thinned out, I'm going to spin it up. And I don't know what you say for this, Amy. I don't know if you try this, but the first few times you do a dubbing loop, you don't know how tight. Yeah, right. You don't know how tight to spin. You'll end up breaking your thread, but
it takes quite a bit of practice, but stick with it. You'll have hair all over the place, but
so once I get it looking good, I like to run a comb through it and see if anything's coming out. Nothing's coming out. Then I'll just give it a little tug. Now that seems, I moved the hair, so I want to tighten it up a little bit more. Couple of spins, right? Make sure nothing's trapped. And now I think it's in there good and I haven't broke the thread, so I'm staying right there. And as you get maybe a dozen of these things, you'll get a feel for it. I transfer to a hackle plier just because that shepherd's hook is open, and if you're not paying attention, the dubbing loop will slip right out of it.
Bruce, you're always paying attention when you tie flies.
That's the only thing that matters in life, Amy Hazel. And just maybe just a little bit of water, and we can fold this hair, possum, marble fox, Arctic fox, you can fold it just like hackle. That's just going to make it easier to wrap.
Very nice. Nice technique, Bruce.
Thank you. Not entirely necessary, but especially when you're new to dubbing loops, a little glass of water can be helpful. There's 2 full turns, 3 full turns, 4 full turns. I'll get rid of it. Now I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 around the main thread, bring the main thread up, put a couple wraps over everything, and I've got a good, durable tie out. And to make it even better, I'm going to bend that dubbing loop over and wrap over.
Durability is key. You want to be able to use the fly for a while.
Right. Now, pick it out just to make sure there's no trapped fibers. So we got the back end, the weight, the prop. You can still see our little hot spot. That's a good thing. And we'll move on.
Bruce, how old were you when you caught your first steelhead?
I was 15 and it was an accident on the Clackamas River.
Accident?
Well, I thought I knew what I was doing, but now that I look back, I got lucky.
What were you fishing for?
Steelhead, but I didn't know what I was doing. I caught it in the back eddy with the water going the wrong direction and was kind of nymphing with it with 50 feet of line out. And just as I was thinking about recasting, I thought I was snagged up, and then my reel lit up and I was addicted for the rest of my life. It was so cool.
That's awesome.
I got really good grades that I was like at a 3.43 or something like that. So my mom let me cut school and go fishing for the day, and that's when I caught it. Get good grades, kid. You get it out of school sometime. So next up, we're going to use some Montana Fly Company barred purple, black barred or purple barred black marabou, and a contrasting color purple together. That is Fish Hunter purple.
What if you didn't have a barred marabou handy? Could you bar your own, Bruce?
Oh yeah, absolutely. In fact, Copic markers, which I think are out of Eugene, Oregon, are the best for barring natural materials.
Better than a Sharpie, Bruce.
Followed by Pantone pins, followed closely by Sharpie. Sharpies work too, but the Copics are amazing.
They are really great. And they have a good angle to them.
And you know what's kind of cool about barring your own, Amy, is you can mini bar, you can space out the bars, you can go wide bar. I mean, you get what you want when you're doing it yourself.
So Louis Alvarado says hello.
Lou, how we doing tonight?
He said, you Barry. He's a fan.
That means he's been drinking on Cinco de Mayo too. Lou's a good guy. He recently started tying commercial orders on some Pro Tube stuff. I think he's down in your neck of the in Beulah's neck of the woods down in Medford. So with the barred marabou, I've taken the long stuff out on the bottom. I'm going to tie them both in tip first. I'm going to lay the barred piece on top of the non-barred piece, match the tips, and that length should shroud the hook. Oh, just perfect. Ooh, I got lucky.
Nice, Bruce.
And this is taking, Amy, if we were tying flies like in your fly tying cave, we'd probably have, 6 or 7 flies done already?
Oh, yeah.
And I was thinking about that on the way up here when people ask me about flies or they don't want to, do complicated flies. And this is kind of one of those box filler flies. It's pretty easy. But I think for those out there that want to tie fast, I think there's a couple of keys. And this comes from, I tied maybe 12 or 13,000 dozen flies commercially for your husband, Kaufman's.
When did you start tying flies commercially?
I was 12 years old. I tied way better than I could fish when I was young. I was addicted.
Did my husband break your heart a bunch of times?
Only a couple times. Randall more than anybody.
They just throw your flies in the garbage when you brought him in.
Gordon Nash was the nice guy.
Yeah, Gordy's always the nice one.
But realistically, Randy Stetzer, your husband John Hazel, and Randall Stetzer, Gordy Nash, and John Hazel were really the ones that pulled me and a couple guys under their wing and taught us kind of the basics for tying flies and really got us going on this stuff. They were awesome with us when we were kids. You could even see the look on their face with all their stolen lunch money walking in the door. They'd be going about their day, and you'd look at them, walk in the front door, and they'd be like, "Oh God."
That's still what John does when you walk in the door, Bruce.
Well, that's John though. He's grumpy. All right, so time in tip first. You know what? Funny about that, Amy. The other day I was talking to John on the phone through this COVID thing, and he said he goes, "I actually miss you, Bruce Berry," and I had to remind your husband that a little of me goes a long ways.
You have a man crush on him. Eric Reed says, "Looking good, Bruce."
Thank you, Eric Reed.
And Louis does live in Medford. He says, "Yes, sir, Medford."
That's right. Home of the famous half pounder.
Just one half pounder, Bruce?
Yeah, that's the limit down there.
So what's when you're tying with these two marabous together? I'll admit I've never done that. I've always tied them in one at a time.
Right.
Do you ever have any issue with that? I mean, is it hard? Is there a trick?
I think, if you put the feathers together and take the bottom fluff off, however much you're going to take off so that they're both even, and then you match the tips and see how long these stems are, Amy?
Yeah.
Instead of cutting the stems off, the marabou is going to want to roll and twist as you're wrapping it. But when you have these nice long handles, you can just spin it right back to where it needs to be so you can keep wrapping. And just the best I can say is work with it and don't work against it. It takes a little bit of trick, but yeah, it's not too bad to simul wrap. It's pretty easy.
Yeah. One thing when I've found over the years with marabou is that there's good, better, and best marabou. Like sometimes we used to get this stuff from Jack Cook, was it? Steelhead something. And
yeah.
Big
Steelhead anglers.
Spay marabou, big bulk marabou, and the stems were like tree trunks.
Mm-hmm.
you'd have to split it just to work with it.
Or you could use the top 1.5
Yeah.
So that's interesting. One of my favorite brands from color and quality has been Fish Hunter. But can you read what I wrote on that bag? I was curious how many good feathers you get in a bag. There's 80 to 100 feathers per bag, and there was 25 good ones in here.
Well, yep. And Fish Hunter is now owned by Nature Spirit, but the Marabou is now still comes in a package that says Fish Hunter.
Right. And it's still good quality. The dyes are still good, right?
Excellent. Excellent. The dyes do hold up really well.
All right. So back to the fly. After I tie this out, I'm going to take a couple forward wraps because I know I'm covering this with hackle and rabbit and other stuff, and then a few rearward wraps. And the reason why I do that is if I do happen to lose bobbin tension, which is just the weight of the bobbin, I won't lose my tie out.
Good.
So a couple forward, couple back. Then you don't need glue or a whip finish, generally speaking, unless it's something that's hard to tie in. And speaking of tie-ins and tie-outs, tubes are really easy because there's natural compression in the tube where there is not on a shank and there's not on a hook. So tying rabbit down, tying different things to tubes is very easy because the tube slightly compresses, and you can get good tie-ins and tie-outs very simply. Okay, so next piece is going to be rabbit. This came from Hairline, and it is a full hide, and it's skinny, not big zonkers. What do they call those? Magnum rabbit strips?
Yeah.
Right. And
Magnum,
so
they have Magnum, but they also have micro.
Sure. Yep. I think this is the micro cut. It's like an 1/8 inch. And then to further that, now, if you guys watched last week, I'm just going to take the back of the strip and cut it. Johnny King did something last week, and he cut a nice heavy V in the rabbit.
Johnny King just commented, Brucey boy, ever smooth. You
Johnny
got the
King.
touch. So Johnny
Every
King's
time
probably pretty happy that you're talking about him right now.
He's good, man. That thing last week was amazing. I mean, that
I
guy's
learned a bunch of stuff from that.
right. He tried to teach me the kinky muddler, and I've tied a dozen of them, and I've thrown them away every time. And when you watch him talk about it and do it, it looks so easy. And every time I get done, I get frustrated and throw it in the garbage can.
John watched that whole thing today. He was into it.
Yeah, that's good. So that little V cut's nice. I think it makes a fly look finished. It gives a little bit more wiggle. It gives a little bit of taper. And I just, I didn't want to go after Johnny King, so I got to one-up him. And I take that rabbit and I don't really measure it. Just grab a chunk of rabbit from about the halfway point. I just scissor cut it and tapered it. And the way you do that is to push the hair out of the way towards the tire. And the scissors you use are really key. This is a razor scissor, very fine points. The tungsten carbide scissors aren't very good for doing this. So you want to have a few different pairs of scissors, but I dive into the leather at the halfway point, just get into the leather and then taper into the back, spin it around. Again, sweep the hair towards the tire, start from the bottom and then taper your way out. And can you guys see the difference in the taper of that strip versus a non-tapered strip?
Yes.
So rabbit's great. I mean, we know fish eat it and it can be hard to cast. It doesn't sink the best, but if you taper it, I think it wiggles better, gets wet easier, and casts easier. So I always taper cut my rabbit. And then just like Johnny King did last week, I'm just going to pull a little bit of that hair off the front to give myself a little tie-in tab just on the leather, not on the hair. And we're prepped and ready to put it on.
You guys can all tell that Bruce has done a gazillion fly tying presentations. He's a master.
That's a little longer than we want. So here's where you can measure it without having to really measure. I'm going to take about 1/4 inch off. Give myself, we'll pull that little tie-in tab back.
Bruce, I think the question that everybody really has burning in their minds is, are you wearing pants?
Well, today's the first day since, 44 days of Corona. I'm actually wearing pants. Well, I went to my sister's house and cousin's house one other time I had to wear pants.
I hope so.
That's great. So with the tie-in, one, to set it, I come around and I go at a 45-degree angle onto the tube and around the tube for a lap, 45 back to the rabbit and around, moving backwards even, 45 again to the tube and a wrap, 45 back. And now we've got these little ears sticking out that are trapped with good firm wraps. And then I want to put some covering wraps on there. And to double check the work, let's see how we did for the tie-in. I mean, when you can bend the tube and the needle, you're probably pretty good. So that's set.
Durability, it's key.
Good time. Tapered rabbit, swimmy. Next material is a couple pieces of flash. This is MFC Acrylics, and the color is dark rainbow. What a decision, Amy. I'd fish this in the dark rainbow, but I also love copper. I had such a hard time deciding.
You know, Bruce, I don't think the steelhead's going to swim up to it and go, oh, I wanted a copper acrylics flash on that.
I know, but if I'm not confident, I might as well throw rocks.
Oh, that's true. You love acrylics. This is your favorite material.
Man, it's so cool. And the reason why I like this one is it's got gold, silver, pink, red. I mean, all the colors are in there, but it just alternates every quarter inch. So I don't need a strand of flash for every color. So I can get away with just two. Divide it in half and go entire side first. Whoa. Calm down, flash. So put a couple, 3 or 4 wraps. And see that? Can you guys see that angle there, Amy?
Yeah.
I think that's going to help keep the flash from fouling. So I always like to tie it at that, almost like you're tying in horns on a spay fly, which is.
And when he's talking horns, he's talking about the Amherst center tail feather. We make little horns over our steelhead flies.
Right. So we'll bring that other side over, lock it, and then prop it up into position, grab all our flash. I like these always a little bit longer than everything else. Those can be adjusted on the fly. You can take one off each side. You can shorten it, whatever. That's done deal. And then the last 2 steps for this fly, we've got saddle hackle. Contrary to the popular schlappen, I want something that's just a little bit stiffer hackle than a schlappen feather. I've got it pre-picked, and I've got a nice thin stem, so I want some of the webby stuff at the bottom. So we'll keep that. And then I've got the nice stiffer stuff up here. And this is something I've seen a few people do. Mark Bachman was one of them too, that, you know how, like, a lot of people will finish their flies with just a 3-turn collar of nice, you know, to make it look good. But if you put a little bit more of that stiff stuff in there, the force of the water hitting the fly is going to get that stiffer saddle hackle rather than schlappen first, buffer some of the water current and allow the marabou and rabbit and everything to stay bloused out along with the prop underneath. But I think you get better movement and the fly just tends to track and swim better. I'm a big fan of a few more wraps than 3 and a slightly stiffer hackle than softer.
Tying that in by the tip that you just cut off?
Yep, tying in by the tip. And I like to pre-cut my tie-ins as well, if maybe you noticed. But instead of, you know, having that tip sitting there and I have to go in and dig it out and cut it, I just pre-cut the tie-in. And here's another really good one for you guys to know. These scissors don't really do it. I haven't found too many that do, but folding the hackle, I'm just going to get some kind of blunt, pull that out, and then rake it. We'll have a hackle talk here for just a second. Both sides. And essentially what that's doing, if I've got the barb going this way, or the stem, and the barbules coming off at angles, the hackles always have a top and a bottom. And this is wet fly style, so I want the hackle back. So by raking that little blunt instrument down the stem, it just kind of forces everything down and makes it easier to sweep. Now, if I was going to do a dry fly, so we've got the top of the feather and the bottom of the feather, and the cup is down when the top's facing up. So this is tied in top side facing me, and it's going to cut rearwards. If I was going to tie it in dry fly style, I'd want the bottom side of the feather facing me if I'm wrapping tip first.
Gotcha.
And it's going to stand the hackle up for dry fly style. Well, really, even if you're tying it on, you know, butt first, I would still want the bottom side facing me as a tire so that the hackle stands up when I wrap it. But there's a little quick hackle
We got
thing.
a comment from Susan Smith. She says, love the idea of the taper cut rabbit. Super nice fly.
Thank you very much. And when you taper them, I mean, tying flies one at a time like this is time consuming, but I really do like to watch a good Simpsons or Family Guy episode and cut somewhere between 12 to 24 strips at a time. So I just have a little Ziploc bag full of pre-cut rabbit ready to rip.
Bruce, your nerd is showing.
My nerd is out there, and
Your
I'm 50.
inner
I'm not
nerd
scared of
is
it.
on display.
So that's a bunch. I think that was 8 turns of hackle.
That was a
It
lot.
wasn't real close, but that makes a good buffer for the water.
Looking good.
And that fold, I mean, it's already laying back. I mean, that's ready to go. Okay. Now we turn to our friend Zapagap.
You love the Zap-A-Gap.
Yes, I do.
I have a love-hate with the Zap-A-Gap. Mostly
Just
hate.
just since we're on video and I don't want to see anything go ugly, I'm going to put a quick whip finish on it. But the Zap, I usually just run down the thread and then put a few thread wraps on it. I'm going to do it with a bodkin. Let me put a dot or two out here. Right, so we have 2 flies we're doing for sure tonight, maybe a third depending on time. And I can tell you it's 5:35 already. It's going to be 2 flies. But at the end, we'll see recipes and materials. So if you guys like them, you can tie them. And right, so
we did coordinate so that I have all these materials on hand.
Nice. How many different colors of purple marabou do you have in your store right now? Shades of
marabou. Well, if you include the barred marabou, quite a few.
I mean, you're probably talking upwards of a dozen, right?
Yeah, I've got a lot of marabou. I mean, we have spay marabou and regular marabou. Stays a little longer, and then we have the Montana Fly Company barred marabou.
UV marabou.
Yeah, the UV colors.
So a little 10-second hold, and that thing's tight to the tube. That's that ultrasonic disc in Gunsmoke, size small. Now I want to cut it. This one you might not be able to see.
Are you going to use your razor blade?
Always, never scissor cut.
Yes, I learned that trick from you, Bruce.
You can scissor cut. It just squashes the tube and sometimes makes the hole close up. And
it's
if I had a lighter,
razor cut.
I don't have a lighter.
What are you looking for?
That's the one thing I forgot today was something to burnish it with. Hold it vertical, bring a flame down to it, roll the lip, and the cone will never come off and it has a nice finished look. But you only need to really do about 1.5 millimeters, like, like the thickness of that fingernail, the white part is perfect. You don't want to do 1/4 inch because you'd spend time tying a nice fly, and then when you start burning it down and shrinking the tube and rolling it, you're either inevitably going to close the hole or catch it on fire. And then when you tamp it out, right?
I've seen it.
So a little bit is better than a lot when you're finishing it and burning a shit.
You know what I do, Bruce? Sometimes I'll just burn it a little bit, and I can actually change out what I have in the front, the cone.
Yeah. If you're really careful, you can kind of pop them on and off almost like Legos.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a trick. That's really cool to do. And so, purple, black. It's funny too. I think there's guys that, this is a year-round summer steelhead fly for a lot of people, right? About 2 3/4 inches long, easy to cast. Summertime I like fishing them for dry lines and hairwing flies, but this will take fish year-round. And then blue, black, purple, black. I got another one here.
Louis says so sexy, and then he says both Bruce and the fly.
I was wondering who he was talking about.
I think there's another man crush going on there.
And this is a color. I don't know if you're an olive person for steelhead, Amy, but it's definitely on these valley rivers out, Clackamas Coast, Sandy, that kind of stuff. Olive is great.
Yeah.
And I tried this one exactly the same weight-wise. I just put some brown or ginger possum underneath. So it's maybe reminiscent of a sculpin. And I went with a fluorescent fire red, which is kind of a reddy orange chenille bump in the back. But that one, you could easily just put a heavier weight in like we showed earlier. Let's just do that real quick.
Did you use? Yeah, I thought you were going to use a raw weight. Did you put a raw weight in there?
I'll do it on this one. So if I had let me get some crazy colors. So let's just say I was going to try a sculpin